This video is brought to you by the University Writing Center, a unit of the Department of Rhetoric and Writing at the University of Texas at Austin. You can contact us at uwc.utexas.edu.
But the purpose, as Kristen said, is to talk a little bit about concision and how we can write more concisely. And I'm assuming that everybody thinks that is important because you've taken 3 hours out of your day today to listen to me. What, it's only 1 hour? Okay, so you've taken an hour out of your day today because you think that concision is important or applies to you. So if you can go to the chat room and just chunk in there really quickly why you think writing concisely is important. What is it about writing concisely that's important to you? This would be really great if I could now see the chat room, which I can't. So you guys are making wonderful inputs, I'm sure. I just can't see what they are. So
Lynn, I can share them with you. So we have express ideas more clearly, to communicate better because everyone is busy, want readers to be able to find a thesis, ensure your audience understands what you are conveying. Argument needs to be sophisticated but easy to understand as a reader. Professional, and it's a great leadership attribute. To communicate clearly, because it's an important way to write scholarly in English. Concision also respects readers' time. There's a need to communicate ideas clearly and writing that's easy to comprehend. And then lastly, easily convey main points and arguments to the reader and keep the reader engaged with compelling, clear writing.
Great. That's wonderful. You all get A's for the class, so let's don't worry about grades now. You really hit the nail on the head. I got this out of Grammarly, and it's just 4 things, but I think you covered all of these plus some. So first of all, we know that business professionals spend about 11 seconds on an email. That's it. We know that people click between websites every 20 seconds or so. We are very impatient. We don't like to spend a lot of time doing anything. We don't like to solve problems for long periods of time. We are just very impatient. We want to move on. And so if we write in long convoluted sentences, our readers just get turned off and they lose interest and they go read something else. Sprawling sentences are overwhelming. They're confusing. They're boring. I will have to tell you, I have fallen asleep in the middle of sentences. I'm the worst of the lot. Readers just don't want to sift through a bunch of verbiage to hunt for the message that we've tried to put in, right? So we need to write clearly and concisely to get that message out very quickly and expeditiously and expediently. And then wordiness, I think somebody alluded to this, wordiness does dilute the impact of our message. We can have a really good, strong message, but if we can't articulate it very quickly and get it in front of the reader so he or she can see it, then that message is kind of lost. So there's some really good reasons for wanting to learn how to write more concisely. And you know that writing is not a natural act. Learning to speak and listen, we do that by the time we're 18 months old, but it takes us 5 years to learn how to write and learn how to read. So it's something that we have to practice, and writing concisely is even much more difficult than that. So thank you for coming to this workshop and showing an interest here. This is great. Now what is concision? And Strunk and White put it best, I think, in their book, The Elements of Style, and that's the website that I try to put in there for you. So if you want to, that's too long to jot down. I'll paste it and get it out to you somehow before the end of the session today. But you can go to Amazon and buy this book for about $7, or you can go to this website and you can download the PDF for free. And it's a really good book. But what Strunk and White say is that a sentence should contain no unnecessary words, and a paragraph no unnecessary sentences, for the same reason that a drawing should have no unnecessary lines and a machine have no unnecessary parts. So when I read that, I thought immediately of the Mona Lisa. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa. I know you've probably seen pictures of it, but it's so captivating because it's so simple and it's so clean, right? There just isn't any unnecessary anything in this portrait. We just look at the face and we look at the eyes and we're just nailed. It's just such a wonderful photo. But Strunk and White go on photo. It's such a wonderful painting. Strunk and White go on though to say that this requires not that the reader make all his sentences short, or that he avoid all of the detail and treat his subjects only in outline, but that every word, every line, every part in that machine has a part to play. And so that's what really helps me focus on writing more concisely. And I challenge myself when I have written something, I challenge myself to go back and cut out about 20% of it. Just see if I can't get those words cut out. But don't make the mistake of thinking that we just want to write quickly, that we just want to write very short blurbs and piece those together. We want to tell this rich detail. We want to have the adjectives and we want to have the personal stories and we want to add all of that to give color to our writing, but we don't want to do it superfluously. We just want to make sure every word that we put into our papers tells a story. So now we're going to kind of start the working part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out several tips for you in how to write concisely. This is the main part of the workshop. But there's this principle in cognitive science called generation. And what that law says, what that principle says, that if you generate an idea, you'll remember it much more effectively than if I generate it and give it to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, this is tip number one. I'm going to give you some sentences and you're going to work through those sentences. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a minute to then go and write that tip, write your own tip for concision. Okay. So it'll look like something like this. So I'll give you the sentence. Each individual is gifted in their own way. And then I'll give you a minute or so to write that more effectively. In this case, we'll take out the word individual. So each is gifted in their own way. Or you could take out each and say individuals are gifted in their own way. Okay, so that's kind of how we do it. So again, I'll let you work on the sentences for a minute. Then I'll come back and we can discuss them if you want. And then I'll give you a minute or so to actually write down the tip. And so using this as an example, in this case, we've eliminated a word here. Why did we eliminate the word? What is it important? What was it that caused us to eliminate this word to become more concise, right? And that's the tip that you're gonna come up with. So why don't we just open it up for a minute? Does anybody have any thoughts on why we eliminated either the word each or the word individual? Nina, how about you? What are you thinking?
Sure, yeah, they're just not necessary.
Okay, why are they not necessary?
It's almost kind of, I guess, saying the same thing. I mean, we know each individual is each their own. I mean, you know, so we don't necessarily need that. It's just additional words.
Okay, good. Anybody else have any thoughts about why we want to eliminate one of those two words? Yeah, Nitin or Nitin? Nitin?
I believe kind of what Nina says, but I'd say that they are redundant. Each refers to singular out of many, and individual obviously refers to one out of many. So they are kind of getting at the same thing.
Okay, I think we heard you, Nitin. You're a little difficult to hear. Your sound was breaking up just a little bit and it was a little soft.
Redundant.
There you go. Okay, Vera, redundant, good. Nitin, back to you. Yeah, okay. Good.
Yeah, that's basically all I said.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute. Everybody take your pen and paper and write down tip number one. What is it about this that is more concise? What's your tip? Okay, pins down. Let's take a look at the next one then. So this is more of tip number one. So you've already started working on this. So everybody take a look at these three sentences on your pen and paper. Go ahead and make one or more of these sentences more concise. Go ahead and practice on these three sentences. If you can get to more than one, fine, but you should be able to at least do one of these. And I'll give you about a minute to do that. Okay, pins down. Let's see, Aaron, why don't you share with us which sentence you picked and how you made it more concise?
I got through the first one and I said I wanted to eat the entire box of cereal to get to the toy inside.
Okay. Did somebody else do a different one? Anna Isabel, what about you?
I did.
Who? Vera?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
Vera.
I wanted the toy in the cereal box, so I ate all the cereal.
Okay, all right, good. I like that. I wanted the toy in the cereal box, so I'm sorry, say it again.
I wanted the toy in the cereal box, so I ate all the cereal.
Okay, good, good. I like that. Anna Isabel, what about you?
I picked the last one. So to enable myself to be a good writer, I need to eliminate the unnecessary verbiage in my writing.
Okay, all right, good. Did anybody tackle number two? Keith.
Yeah, I wrote it as productivity depends more on psychology than technology.
Good, excellent. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's take a look at what I came up with. And I'll warn you, there are no book answers, right? So I'll just throw this out. So this is one way. So on number one, I wanted to eat. So when we say really, I really wanted to eat, really is kind of doesn't add a lot of value. What does really mean? Really to you may be different than really to me. And so you kind of need to watch those adjectives and adverbs that you use. So I wanted to eat the box of cereal. Entire in this case is kind of unnecessary. I think the reader can kind of assume that if you're going to get to the toy, you've got to pretty much plow down through the box of cereal to get the toy inside. The article, the preposition there is not necessary. And I flagged in order to, because in order to and to are basically saying the same thing. As a matter of fact, if you've got your grammar checker turned on in Microsoft Word, Bill Gates will flag that for you automatically. So I have a hard time with that because I like in order to, it just sounds cool, but it doesn't add anything. And the second one, productivity actually depends. Actually, again, is one of those words that doesn't really add a lot of value. It depends or it doesn't depend. It doesn't actually depend on. And then we've got certain factors that basically involve really kind of unnecessary, just a lot of words that are hand waving. More than any particular technology, again, superfluous words in there that we really don't need. And then the last one, you can really make this a lot simpler by saying, to be a good writer, eliminate unnecessary words. If you want to throw in order for me to be a good writer, okay, I will eliminate unnecessary words, that's fine. But the idea is that there are a lot of these words in here that just aren't adding a whole lot of meaning. So is this kind of making sense? Can I get a head nod? Is anybody really confused or lost on any of these things? Okay, so we've kind of already written the tip for the first one. If you want to modify it later on after these examples, that's fine. But let's move on and take a look at the second tip. Okay, and so the gimme that I'll start off with is, first and foremost, we must write well. And the book answer there is, first, we must write well. Okay, so you all tackle either the second or third sentence on here. And I'll give you about a minute again to work on those two sentences. Okay, we should be wrapping up here. About 5 more seconds. Okay, Molly, which one did you pick and what'd you come up with?
Well, I was working on kind of 2 and 3. 2 was kind of difficult. I came up with this is an accurate account of my actions.
Okay,
or
good.
This account of my actions is true.
Okay, all right. But you eliminated either accurate or true, right? You eliminated
Right.
one of those 2 words in each of your examples. Okay, good. And what about the second one?
Oh, for me still?
Did you work on it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I worked on the first part of it, but I didn't finish it.
Okay,
I'll let someone else
never
go.
mind. Let's move. How about Iris? Did you work on the second one by any chance?
I did. I put, she admitted to her addiction. This is the first step to recovery.
Okay, all right, good. Let's see, Selena, you are a late joiner. Have you figured out the game yet? And do you have, did you tackle one of these 2?
Sure, yeah. I did the last one too. Do you want that one or?
Sure, yeah.
She took I think it was similar. She took the first step toward recovery and made a full disclosure of her addiction.
Okay, good. All right. So here's what I had come up with. True and accurate is basically redundant, right? If it's true, then it's accurate. If it's accurate, then it's true. You could probably argue if you wanted to, but I think as a generalization, you're just eliminating words that are repeating each other. And for the second one, she made a complete disclosure of addiction. This is basic first step towards a basic first step towards recovery. Okay. Anybody have any questions about those, eliminating those words, why we eliminated those words? Okay, I'm going to give you a minute. Go ahead and write down your second tip. This is tough because the tips are very similar, but there's a subtle difference between the 2. Okay. Okay, pins down. So the subtle difference is the first one, we were eliminating words that had very little meaning or were repetitive, but didn't add any value to the word they were modifying. And the second one, we were eliminating words that repeated the meaning of the first word. Okay, So same general category, subtle difference there. Let's move on to something that's a little more distinct. And you're doing so well, I'm not going to give you a hint here. I'm just going to let you work. Pick one or two of these, or whatever you can do in about a minute, and let's see what you come up with. Go ahead. Okay, about 10 more seconds here. Okay, who did the first one? Just raise your hand here. Anybody work on the first one? Okay, so Key, what did you come up with for the first one?
Mine is, it was large and unusual.
Ah, very good, Key, very good. I work with Key a lot on writing, and she has this consternation on her face. She concentrates so hard, and sometimes it worries me, but excellent work. That was very good. Okay, let's see, Emily, which one did you work on and what'd you come up with?
For number 2, the holes must be aligned accurately.
Okay, good. I like that. Now we're going to get into unpronounceable names for me. So I apologize. I'm going to do my best. So Chang Zhui, what did you come up with for yours?
I only work on the first two. The first one, I say it's unusual that size was large.
It's unusual that the size was large. Okay, we'll come back and talk about that in just a second. Did I pronounce your name anywhere near correct?
Yeah, that's very correct. Chang Rei, yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody work on the second or third one? Raise your hand. Okay, Vera, let's take a look at what you did.
Which one do you want? 2 or 3 or 4?
How about number 3?
During that period, the field became muddy and muddy. That's it, muddy.
Okay, good. Now explain why you cut out brown in color and wet in appearance.
Because if it's muddy, it is already brown and wet.
Brilliant. That's very good. I will caution you though, I'm from Alabama and we have no brown anything in Alabama. It's all red. But that's a minor exception. That's a minor exception. You're exactly right. But if we were in
muddy
Georgia,
brown, muddy brown,
you could, just to clarify it for us country boys from Alabama. But the point is, you were very accurate there. It's just if you're from Alabama or Georgia, you would say the field became muddy red. So we'll give you that one. Very good. Did anybody tackle the last one? Okay, Keith, go ahead.
I said, imagine trying to learn the rules of chess.
Okay, good. I like that. Imagine trying to learn the rules of chess. Okay, very good. Let's take a look here. So in the first one, it was unusually large. It's pretty good. Now, I will warn you that if we're talking about, let's say a whale washed up on the beach and you go, wow, it was unusually large. It was even large for a whale. But then it was unusual in nature. So let's say instead of having flippers, it had dog paws. So in that case, you kind of need 2 different modifiers, right? It was unusually large and it was unusual in nature. So there is some room for having both of those in there, depending on the meaning of your sentence. But yeah, that one, it was unusually large. It's probably the closest to being the most concise. The holes must be aligned in an accurate manner can be eliminated because we can assume that if you're going to align the holes, you're going to align them accurately. Now, I've worked with engineers and they would tell me, no, Lynn, we can deliberately misalign holes and put them in inaccurately. But for the rest of us, removing in an accurate manner is just not necessary because we can infer that that's how you're going to align those holes. Okay.
Sorry, a quick question. So can we just write, I missed that last part. Can we just write another answer is just the holes must align?
Yes, that's very good. Yeah, change the tense of the verb. Yeah, very good, Vera. You get an extra star for that one. Super. Okay, number 3, during, and Vera was pretty much right on the money during that time. And that's important because we're talking about a specific time during the day. It wasn't, in the middle of the night. It was a specific time. And again, the area on the field, we can just say it was the field, became muddy and assume that the reader can infer that it's brown in color and muddy is wet in appearance. And we don't need to therefore say that. Now, it may be that you want to be specific about the area on the field. You may want to say the area of the field at the 50-yard line. So there you would want to include some words to give it that rich color that we talked about earlier. But otherwise, you can just simply slice this down to during that time, the field became muddy. And then Keith, you were very close, if not exactly right. Imagine someone learning chess. Okay, so trying to learn, I think we can infer that we try to learn. We all try to learn, so there's no need to say that. And if you're learning chess, then you're learning the rules for playing the game of, so that would be unnecessary. Okay, so here we're pretty much just eliminating those words that a reader can infer without you having to spell out and waste their time and make them read. Okay, so we'll give you a minute. Go ahead and write down your tip for this one. Aaron, you must write very concisely because you're always the first one done with your tip. So congratulations. Okay, 10 more seconds if you need it. Okay, pens down. We're going to move on to probably the most common error in concision, and it's especially applicable to you master's students because you want to sound academic. All right, so here we go. Each is gifted in their own way. Prior to the end of training, apply for your license. Disregard. I'm sorry, I'm one ahead of myself. Yep, sorry, I got ahead of myself. So let's go ahead and tackle these and everybody pick one and go ahead and work on it. I'll give you a minute. Go. Okay, about 5 more seconds here. Okay, I'm going to try pronouncing this one, but Ching Huang, is that close to your name?
Yeah,
Okay, tell me how to pronounce it. I'll try again.
it's Ching Hong. Yeah, it's the right way.
Ching Hong. Okay, well, close. All right. So which one did you take and what did you come up with?
I actually tried to rephrase the first one. It's pretty hard. Say I just rephrase it like each is gifted differently.
Oh, okay, good. I like that. Yeah. Um, let's see, Emily, back to you. Which one did you pick and what did you come up with?
I did the first one a little differently. I said each is uniquely gifted.
Okay. Each is uniquely gifted. Good. I like that. Um, let's see, Latoya, I don't think I've called on you yet. I apologize. Which one did you take and what did you come up with?
I did the second one.
Okay, good.
And I said before before the end of training, apply for your license.
Okay. Before the end of training, apply for your license. Okay. So notice now how, so some of us are getting into creative writing, which is fine, right? We're taking phrases or words, we're finding different words, we're finding different ways to express ourselves, and we're going to actually practice doing that a little bit longer. So there is a creative writing aspect to this, and that's fine as long as you don't change the core meaning of the sentence, right? And I'll show you an example of that in just a little bit. So when you're writing more precisely, make sure that you're staying true to the meaning of the sentence. And I've given you a couple of examples with the whale with the dog paws. You know, you want to stay true to the meaning and don't get so concise that you change the meaning of the sentence. Okay, Vera, which one did you take and what did you come up with?
I came up with, I did the first three. Everyone is gifted. Apply for your license prior to the end of training. Errors occur despite checking data.
Okay, errors occur despite checking data. Okay, good. Did anybody try the last one? Anybody get that far? Okay, fair enough. Let's take a look at kind of the book answer here. Each is uniquely gifted. Okay, so when we say in their own way, that's what unique means, right? So we're kind of replacing that phrase with a single word. Prior to the end of training, apply for your license. So before training ends, apply for your license, taking a large number of words and just cutting it down to one. Although data were checked, errors occurred. Okay. Despite the fact that the data were checked, actually falls into the next category as well. So we'll cover that in just a second. And then the last one, as you carefully read what you have written to improve wording and catch errors of spelling and punctuation, that phrase is what edit means, right? When you edit something, you are carefully reading to improve and catch errors. So we can eliminate that entire phrase by simply putting in a shorter phrase as you edit, replace phrases with a single word. Okay, so 1 minute, go ahead and write the tip that you got from these examples. Okay, about 10 more seconds here. Okay, pins down. Now we're going to move on to the most common mistake, and I find it with grad students all the time, and it's because we try to write academically. It has this big fancy word, but I'm going to let you take a look at these sentences and see what you come up with, and we'll talk about what the big problem is. The good news is once you kind of discover this problem and start looking for it, you'll catch it every time, and it's really a lot of fun to eliminate this problem. So go ahead and work for a minute on these. Okay, about 5 seconds. Pins down. Selena, which one did you pick? What'd you come up with?
I did the strategy one. So I said the strategy failed to reduce cost.
Good, excellent. Okay. Let's see, Molly, back to you. What did you come up with?
I did a few of them. I said for the third one, the cost reduction strategy failed.
Okay. Yeah. So just changing the words around a little bit in order to cut down on the words, right? The number of words and keep the same meaning. Aaron, how about you?
I looked at the first one and I just said decide and made it a command.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Let's see, did anybody work on the very last one? Okay, Vera, over to you.
Let's see. Students collaborated on problem solving.
Okay, excellent. Very good. And the second one, let's see, Iris, the second one is kind of my favorite. Did you work on that one by any chance?
I analyzed the Chilean rental voucher system.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right. So in this one, the first one's fairly simple. I mean, we just make it a command, decide. Now it's not very prosaic, right? So you may have a hard time putting that into a sentence. The second one, the third one, and the fourth one, these are a problem called nominalizations. That's the big fancy grammar word. They're also called zombie verbs, and I used to know them as smothered verbs. And here's what we do. We take a perfectly good word like analyze, and we turn it into a noun by adding ing. So it's analyzing. And once we do that, now we got to put a verb in front of it to make it actionable. So we continue working on analyzing. And now working on analyzing is just long. It's just fluff, right? When we could simply say, I will also continue analyzing the Chilean rental voucher system. Or number two, strategy has been a failure in reducing costs. So failed to reduce is much simpler and much more concise than has been a failure in reducing costs. And the last one, exactly right. Students collaborated on unfamiliar and open-ended problems instead of worked collaboratively, which is taking the verb collaborative or collaborate, turning it into a noun, and then having to add a verb to it. So zombie verbs or smothered verbs or the fancy nominalization, very, very common. And you find it in research papers all the time. And so watch out for those. And you can identify them anytime you see a word that ends with ing or ion or ely that is a verb, you've probably got some smothering going on there that you can make more concise. Probably the next most common error that grad students make is writing in the passive voice. So these are pretty simple. We won't go around the room on these, but I will give you a chance to work on them. But my first visit to Boston shall always be remembered by me. What a long way to say I shall always remember my first visit to Boston, right? It's just, now, if you're British or a subject of the King's English, or I'm sorry, the Queen's English, then you're going to write in passive voice because they do this, and it's perfectly fine in their culture. As a matter of fact, they don't like American writing because we write active voice and they find it very odd. I'm sorry if I offended anybody British. I worked with an RAF officer for years and years, and we used to fight over passive versus active voice all the time. So at any rate, take a minute and tackle one of the other two there and see what you come up with. Go. About 10 more seconds here if you want to wrap it up. Okay, so I mentioned there are no right answers. You can write concisely any number of ways. So I gave you a couple of options for the second one. At dawn, the crowing of the rooster could be heard. So the cock's crow came at with dawn. A little bit of creative writing thrown in there as we're reducing that down, putting it into active voice. We heard the crowing of the rooster at dawn. The rules must be followed. Again, you can make this declarative, follow the rules, and make it much more concise that way. Okay, any questions on active versus passive? There should be. I'll give you a hint. There should be a question here. Yes, Farah.
Can you make it too concise?
Yes, absolutely. If again, if you change the meaning, you can make it too concise. If you make it so short, it doesn't convey what your thought is. That's a problem.
Okay.
So it's a balance. Yeah, and again, if you're making it too concise, generally that means you're taking out the color and the flavor, right? And so you want to be careful. You want to be descriptive in some cases, and you don't want to cut out all of the nice color. Okay. The question that should come up in your mind about active versus passive voice is, well, Lynn, are there times I should use passive voice? And there absolutely are. And there's kind of three occasions. So if you don't know, or your reader doesn't really care who did the action, then it's perfectly fine. And sometimes it's better to use the passive voice. So the wildfire was put out by helicopters. We don't care that Bill was flying an HH-64 Apache helicopter. We just want to get the point across to our readers that this wildfire in California was put out by these marvelous helicopters that were carrying water. You want the reader to focus on a particular character, all right? So in Lincoln's great Gettysburg Address, he ends it by saying that all men are created equal. He wanted to emphasize that men are created equal. He didn't want to emphasize somebody. In this case, he would have said something like God created all men equal, which would have put the emphasis on God. He wanted to put the emphasis on men, that all men are created equal, okay? And then the third occasion that you can legitimately use a passive voice is if you want to shift a bundle of information, a package of information to the end of the sentence in order to start with a shorter chunk of information. So let's imagine that your president, your CEO, or your professor comes in and says, you know, our decision will be determined by. So that's kind of the point that they want to make. This is what is going to help us make this decision. And then they list the different things that will go into the decision making. So those are kind of the three cases where you can legitimately use passive versus active voice. Research, there's a lot of passive voice going on in research, and that's a whole different subject. I've read articles that said the methodology should all be in passive voice. I disagree with that. But the kind of the real bear is if you're doing research, you should probably talk to your research advisor about the use of passive versus active voice, or come over to the Writing Center and talk to us. There are times when you don't necessarily want to be an active voice, but generally it's more concise, it's more vigorous, and it tells a better story when you're an active voice. Okay, we've got about 7 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of run through. Those are kind of the tips. Oh, let me give you well, the tip is write an active voice whenever you can. There, I'll give it to you. Fairly simple. Just to save a little bit of time.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
What if we're writing is it accepted, right? I was accepted into XYZ program and whatever. Is that a
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that question a lot in the Writing Center and that question comes up in research papers or thought papers. When can I use I, and when should I stay away from that? And I would say that anytime you're writing a personal statement, if your professor says, look, read this book and tell me what you think about it, what was the message, what was the argument of the author, then it's perfectly legitimate to use I. Other than that, there was a rule that in research, you never said I, you never said the team, you never said we, but that is really fading out. I read a lot of research papers that use first person, second person. And it's this effort, I think, to convert away from this passive voice, which is kind of long and academic sounding and boring, and giving it some life by using I or my team or the team and going active voice. Great question. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions about the rules there, the tips rather? Okay, so you should have 6 good solid tips. You'll need to practice those. So how do you practice writing concisely? And this is, I'm going to skip this. I'll come back if we have time. This is a little game that I like to play. It's really kind of fun rather. And this is I read this story to my granddaughters, right? It's the 3 little pigs. He huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed and he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but he couldn't blow the house down. At last, he was so out of breath that he couldn't huff and puff anymore. And so he stopped to rest and he thought a bit. And this is what we're going to do with this very quickly. I want you to tell this story in less than 6 words. Tell the same story in 6 or less words. Go. Okay, about 10 more seconds here. So if we had more time, I would love to see what each of you wrote. This is kind of fun. This is where the challenge is. Can I get this condensed down into 6 words? And the answer a lot of times is no, you just can't. So then that's the challenge. What are you going to throw out? And when you start thinking about what am I going to throw out? What am I going to leave in? Then you're getting down to what's essential. What is the essential message that I need to tell my audience? And then you start asking your questions like, well, if that's not absolutely essential, do I need to put it in there? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. This is kind of what I came up with. He substituted huffing and puffing with thinking. He couldn't succeed, so he quit. Puffing didn't work. Instead, he planned or he thought. So in each case, I had to leave something out. And so what I'm going to do very quickly is kind of walk through my methodology here. So step one is to identify what is important to get across. What in this story do you want to get across? Well, the fact that he huffed and he puffed is important because that's the action. That's what he was doing. He failed. He couldn't blow the house down. That's important, right? It was the brick house. Remember the third house? And now he's so out of breath that he can't huff and puff anymore. And so he stopped and he rested and he thought. Okay, so the first thing is kind of identify what's really important in your writing that you have to have in there. And then you apply your 6 tips of concision. First, you delete words that have little meaning, like well and that and so and a bit. He thought a bit. A bit doesn't add any value. Secondly, you delete words that are repetitive. Lots of huffs and puffs and lots of puffs and huffs. And my granddaughters love that. They just laugh and laugh and laugh every time I say huff and puff. But if you're writing, you don't really need to add in all those huffs and puffs, right? And then he couldn't huff and he couldn't puff anymore. Well, you're just repeating yourself. We couldn't huff and puff anymore, right? Okay. And so then we delete the words, tip number 3, that the reader can infer. He couldn't huff and puff anymore because he was out of breath. So you could leave in one or the other, but you don't need to leave in both. He's out of breath and he couldn't huff and puff anymore. Then we're going to replace a phrase with a word. I'm replacing it last with finally, and I'm replacing couldn't huff and puff anymore with was tired. All right. Now I look for smothered verbs, number 6, number 5, and then I look for active voice, and we didn't have any smothered verbs. Everything's in active voice, so those were good. And so with a minute left in this workshop, here's what I came up with. He huffed and he puffed, but he couldn't blow the house down. At last, he was tired and stopped to rest and think. So the last step is you smooth out any grammar glitches that you have created by cutting out words, and then you come out with this. So here we go. Now, I tell you, I would not tell this story to my granddaughters because they would skewer me. They want to hear the whole story. They want to get all the rich detail. They want to see grandpa say huff and puff and puff and huff because that just tickles them to death. So consider your audience. Think about who they are, what's important to them, and what you need to leave in and what you can take out. Now, you can practice these by going to Reader's Digest. Every year, Reader's Digest has a 100-word short story contest. And you can get some really, really cool short stories that are about 100 words long. Something like this, for example. And then you can practice cutting that short story down to only 6 words or 7 or 5. What you're trying to do is just practice identifying what's important, cutting out as much as you can, finding other ways to say things, and finishing up with a more concise story. So I tell you, if you are interested in doing some of this stuff, email me. I'll put in my, oh shoot, I can't find my, I still can't find my chat box, and I apologize. So here's what I'll do. I will somehow figure out how to email you my email address. For Iris and Nina, you know it. It's uwsealandwills@utexas.edu, but that's okay. I'll get you that information. You know it. Key, you know it as well. But I'll send you a link to these stories. You can capture your own. And then I'll also send you the email to the PDF, in an email, the link to the PDF file, so you can go get the Strunk and White book if you want to download that and take a look at it. So let's wrap up. I'm a minute over. I apologize. Any final questions? Anybody have anything? Anything else? Okay, thank you, Selena, for the thumbs up there. Great. Okay, so we're done. Thank you. I'm going to hang around. If you want to hang around and ask questions, we can talk about this a little bit more. Thank you, Anna Isabel. Thank you for that. If anybody else wants to hang around and discuss this a little bit more, I'm more than happy to hang with you and we can chat. And maybe I'll figure out where the dadgum, where my chat room got off to. So I apologize for that. So thanks again for coming out, folks. Again, Writing Center, come see us anytime. EMPLers, great to see you. Hope things are going well. So take care.